Hi everyone. Today what I'd like to do is I would like to find the values of x for this inequality. So the inequality is what? What is an inequality first of all? An inequality is an equation, but instead of having an equal sign, we have a smaller or a smaller or a greater, a smaller or equal or a greater than equal sign. So we have a polynomial, and then we have another polynomial or a constant. We'll use a constant for this example. And either we will have the symbols less than, less or equal than, greater than, or greater than equal, or an equal. So this is basically the possible values for our inequalities, okay? In general, this is what it is. Now, let's try to find the values of x for which this inequality holds. So the first thing you want to do, step 1, is simple. You want to put it in standard form, okay? So for any type of quadratic function, you want to put it in general form. And we know that the general form is simply ax squared plus bx plus c, and then you have your inequality. So whatever is on the left-hand side, so your function has to be in this form. Luckily for us, we already have it in this form. Step number 2, I'd like to equal it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set our polynomial, in this case is x squared plus 2x minus 15, equal to 0. Okay, so setting p of x equal to 0, where p of x is just any polynomial. Okay, in this case we have this one here. So, and we're gonna solve. Okay, so step 3, solve. So I have x squared plus 2x minus 15 is equal to 0. So again, how can I solve this? I can easily solve this using the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula, which is minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So here I have minus b, which is 2, so minus 2, plus or minus the square root of b squared. So b squared is just 2 squared, minus 4 times a is 1, c, which is minus 15. And all of this divides by 2a, where a again is just 1. So from this, we will receive 2 answers, okay? Before I get to that, actually, let me just rewrite it. So I have here minus 2 plus or minus. Now this is going to become 4. Minus 4 times minus 15 is just 60. All of this divides by 2. So from this, we have minus 2 plus or minus the root of 64 is 8, and divided by 2. So we have 2 values, x1 and x2, where x1 is minus 2 minus 8 by 2, and x2 is minus 2 plus 8 by 2. So here I have minus 10 by 2, which is just minus 5. Here I have 8 minus 2, which is 6 divided by 2 is 3. So here are our values of 0, or we could also call them our boundary points, okay? So the boundary points in this case are going to be minus 5, 0, and 3, 0. Okay, let's move on to step 4, which is a bit more complicated. So let me just switch here. Again, we are looking to find the values of x such that x squared plus 2x minus 15 is less than 0. So we had found 2 values. We had found x is equal to, going back, minus 5, and the other is 3. So These are the two values or the boundary points that we were talking about. Step 4. Here is a bit tricky. So we're going to try to create a table of values. Now the table of values is not a regular table of values. It's a table of values that will tell us what's happening with the function. What type of analysis can we give this function? So what you want to do is realize that for any polynomial function, the values of x take on minus infinity to infinity. These are the possible values of x, okay? We know that for a quadratic function, the domain is all of your real numbers, okay? So in this case, what we're going to do, we are going to rewrite our table. How? If I were to rewrite minus infinity to minus 5, not included, and then I'm going to have another one that goes from minus 5 to 3, not included. And then I'm going to have 3 to infinity. So I'm basically putting my minus infinity to my boundary point, 1, okay? Or x1. And then here I'm looking at all of the values between x2 and, between x1 and x2. Okay, and here I'm looking at x2 to infinity. Okay, so here is basically the values for which the function can be equal to. So let's basically, what we're going to do is we're going to take values between these intervals. Okay, so the first thing is telling me what? It's like as if I have a line and here's 0 and here is minus 5. So it's basically going from negative infinity all the way to minus 5, not included. And we've seen that when it's not included, it has an open circle, okay? So these are the values that I'm taking. So suppose I take a random value, we'll call that value minus 10, because minus 10 is clearly between, okay? So if I take minus 10, and I were to test it into the function, let's see what happens. Minus 10 squared plus 2 into minus 10 minus 15. So that's 100 minus 20 minus 15, which is greater than 0. So this is telling us that if I were to take a value of negative 10 and plug it in here, I get a positive value of 0. So technically this is saying what? It's saying that between minus infinity and minus 5, I will always get positive values. Okay, let's move on. If I take a value between minus 5 and 3, so again, if I have my 0 line, 3 is here and 5 is here, minus 5. So I'm looking at all of these values here. Okay, again, we have that minus 5 is not included and 3 is not included. Okay, so that being said, if I take a value between these two, so for instance, if I take 0, then I would have 0 squared, plugging it back into the function, minus 15, so less than 0. Yes, this is less than 0, so it works. So here is going to be negative. Okay, and finally, let's look at another one. Between 3, so if this is 0 and this is 3, so not included, I am looking at the values between 3 and positive infinity. So suppose I take, for instance, I can take 10. 10 is between, so it works. So now 10 squared plus 2 times 10 minus 15. Is it less than 0? No, it's not less than 0, okay? Because it is greater than 0. I have 120 minus 15. So here is greater. So now we're going to look at what we have from the beginning. Step 5. After doing our analysis, so the analysis part is the hardest part, okay? Now I can basically see when is it less than 0. So when is it negative? It is negative. It is negative when when p of x, okay, actually when the values of x are between -5 and 3 not included. And that's basically how we can find the value of x for this inequality.